Right, so basically, the cosmological argument, it seeks to prove the existence of God based on the idea that there is a universe. So that's point number one. Secondly, it seeks to prove why there is a universe rather than nothing. This word cosmos, so it's like a key word, means the world or universe as a perfect and well-ordered system. Okay, good. So the classical cosmological argument is a posteriori, which is an argument based on the idea that it's kind of based on experience rather than reason or anything. So basically, from our observations of how things move and change in the world, we can and see how they come into existence and they cease to exist. We can base our ideas about the universe on this. But also in this argument, they say that we do not live in an empty universe. There's always something rather than nothing. So then there comes to the idea of this god of classical theism. So this guy who's eternal and separate from the universe. He's all powerful, so omnipotent. He's omniscient, so all knowing. He's outside of time and space. But this guy has a necessary existence. So although he lives outside of time and space, he's able to create and act within our universe, and he never ever fails to exist. So Aristotle, yeah, he's from 384 to 322 BC, which is a pretty old guy, really. He kind of had the same, well, Aquinas kind of based his ideas on Aristotle's. They're quite similar, as you can imagine. He thought that all movement, including change, growth, and melting and all that, has to depend on a mover, which is a common source. So means that one thing was responsible for the beginning of everything to come into existence and have the cause of chain of movements and things. And he thought this was an eternal substance, so it's unaffected by change and decay and death, so infinite kind of. He called this guy the unmoved mover, which is the ultimate cause to begin change of cause and effect. So without it, nothing would exist. So yeah, he called us the prime mover, which is a really important word. You need to remember that if you can. This prime mover was God for Aristotle, as you can imagine. But there's quite a big difference here. He's not an efficient cause, so kind of like doing something, like performing an action to bring about what you want. But he was a final cause, so a kind of a reason for something to be brought about. So he doesn't actually do anything. It's not like a push, but it's telos, which is consequences rather than action of the movement. So quite a good example of this is if you have a cat and you've got a bowl of milk, the cat's going to want the milk. It's going to be drawn to the milk, but the milk's not going to go and tap him on the shoulder like, come and drink me, So it's not like it's like a physical action he does, but things are drawn to him. It's not changed in the process, the milk isn't, but the cat is still, affected by it. There's still the desired result is brought about like that. But my battery's about to die, hang on. So it would not be good, would it? There we go. So yeah, he says that it means that this prime mover is perfect. So everything is attracted to it, not knowingly perhaps, but he's still, everything is drawn towards God, pardon me, without knowing it. The thing is about Aristotle, which is quite different from Aquinas, he actually says that God did not create, sustain, act in, or have interest in the universe, because this would compromise on his supremacy of perfection. So God, Aristotle thought God was supremely perfect, so he has got all the perfection, so has no interest in the universe, but instead he thinks about himself. It's kind of selfish, really. Thinks about himself, and that makes him supremely happy, really. Right, so Thomas Aquinas was this guy. He walked around about 1224 to kind of 74-ish. he wrote a book called Summa Theologica. He kind of, in that book, he kind of quotes Aristotle quite a lot. He quite liked his ideas because he thought they were compatible with Christianity. He also thought that finding God can be done through human reason, not just revelation. So if we think about it, we can get to a reasonable and rational answer. He also developed the 5 ways to prove the existence of God, but only 3 of them are form the cosmological argument, really. Right, so his first way is based on motion. The idea that objects only move when an external force was applied to them. There's a chain of movements, one thing moving another, which moves another thing, and he thought that this can't go back to infinity, so eternity, time without end. It's kind of brought into the conclusion that there must have been a first mover, someone who started off this chain. He's called it the unmoved mover, so obviously kind of self-explanatory, but he doesn't need to be moved in himself, but he moves other things. And so for Aquinas, this was God. There's a nice little quote here. I'm just going to read it. Motion is nothing else than the reduction of something from potentiality to actuality, except by something in a state of actuality. So by potentiality, he means that there's a chance for the person or the thing to change in itself. By actuality means what it is actually at the moment, so its state of being right now. Also, by moving, the argument of motion, he doesn't just mean physically moving, so like this, but he means stuff like aging or like melting or growing, that kind of movement. Also, he thought that the whole potentiality actuality thing was basically that everything has potentiality, apart from, and the only thing that has actuality is God. So that's pretty straightforward to understand, really. So, Aquinas' second way is based on causation. So, the idea that everything in the world has a cause. Nothing in the world can cause itself, because that just wouldn't make sense. But there cannot be an infinite regress. That's a really important phrase, that. There can't be an infinite regress of causes. So there must be an uncaused being which doesn't depend on anything else to exist. There has to be a first cause, which is uncaused, to start this chain of causes. That Aquinas called God. It's kind of the same as the first what's it called? First way, so of motion. It's kind of phrased differently. There's this guy as well called Gottfried, Gottfried Leibniz, Leibniz, who was kind of from 1648 to 1716, that's what it was. I came up with this principle of sufficient reason, and he was a supporter of Aquinas. He accepted the cosmological argument because he said that there has to be a sufficient reason for the universe to exist, and he kind of uses this in the same way when he rejects infinite regress, because this is not a satisfactory explanation for this. Good. He rejected infinite regress because it's not a satisfactory explanation for the existence of the universe, is what I was trying to say. Just spilled coffee all down me. Okay, so Aquinas' third way is based on necessity and contingency. Basically, everything in the world is contingent, so it depends on something else for its existence. Given an infinite time, there must have been a time when all contingent things did not exist. But nothing can come from nothing. That's a really important phrase, that nothing can come from nothing, yet things exist now. So there must be a being outside of time and space, God, to bring things into existence. The being itself must have a necessary existence, and the being that we all call God, really. Or Aquinas did anyway. Okay, so Frederick Copleston had this radio debate with this guy called Russell, who I'll talk about later, in 1948, and he said that everything must be contingent. He basically just copied Aquinas, really. He just sort of said his arguments, but everything is contingent. There must be a cause of everything in the universe, which is outside of time and space. The cause must be being that does not depend on anything else, so it has a necessary existence. And he also thought this was God, so yeah. So yeah, people have different interpretations of the role of God. So, but based on the cosmological argument, I'm going to look at a few of the roles that people think of God as. So, firstly, Aristotle, he doesn't think that God created the universe in a temporal way. So he doesn't think that, because temporal means kind of earthly and worldly. So he doesn't think that he created it. He doesn't think he sustained it. I've already said this, but or act or have interest in the universe as it would compromise his perfection. He's a prime mover and the final cause of the universe, and all things are drawn towards him. So that's kind of, you could put that in a paragraph, paragraph. Scottish? No. Anyway, but in contrast to this, God as a temporal first cause is quite a well-known role of God in the cosmological argument. So we've got God as a creator. So in way 1 and way 2, he's the first. He's the what's it called, prime mover and the uncaused cause. So but they can't go back infinitely because there'll be no prime mover. So that's why he rejects infinite regress. So going back and back and back of causation, because it makes no sense really. You can put that in another paragraph. We've got God as a sustainer of motion, causation, and existence. It's kind of Aquinas' God is a sustainer, and he's immanent. So he's way that's kind of focused on the way 3. So of necessity and contingency. So yeah, he's necessary for everything in the universe. He's needed. So at every moment, God is necessary to hold up the universe. Yeah. God, another role of God might be as an explanation why there is something rather than nothing. If you remember our little catchphrase from before, if it's kind of like focused on way 3. So if things are contingent, they depend on something outside themselves for creation. So there must have been a time when there was nothing in existence. This is it's kind of the same repeated arguments, this question, but it's kind of set out in a different way. So yeah, if there's no necessary being, then nothing can come from nothing, which is what we were talking about before, and so the universe could not exist, basically. And those are all the roles of God. Obviously, there's some people who've got a problem with this, mostly atheists, but firstly, one of the main guys is David Hume, who was from kind of 1711 to 1776. He thought that cosmological argument was a load of rubbish because we have no experience the universe is being made, and therefore we can't even think about speaking about the creation of the universe as we have no experience of it. So, and he also thinks that Aquinas is wrong in making a link between cause and effect, and this is kind of the same as David Hume also thought that Aquinas said that infinite regress cannot exist, but then he goes and says that God is eternal and infinite. So how he kind of contradicts himself there is what Hume is trying to say. He thinks that induction, which is quite an important word, so a conclusion is reached by linking cause and effect, but by observing cause and effect. So, but he thinks that saying everything has a cause to the universe has a cause is quite a big jump. It's too big a leap in logic, is what he says, and you can kind of see why, but I'm neutral. He wrote a book called In Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. He asks why the universe has to have a beginning. Little quote here: how can anything that exists from eternity have a cause, since that relation implies a priority in time and a beginning of existence? So even if the universe did begin, it doesn't mean anything caused it to come into existence. It could have just happened by chance, you know? If there was no cause, then there's no evidence that's God of classical theism anyway. We don't know anything about him, so how can we say that it is him if he's outside time and space, is what he's trying to say. I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply do. Okay then, Immanuel Kant, let's talk about him for a while. 1770, no, scratch that last. 1724 to 1804, okay? So he also had a problem with the cosmological argument, because he says that we cannot apply evidence based on experience to something that we have not experienced. So he kind of says the same as Hume. He kind of thinks that we can't, make links between things that we don't actually know about. He recognizes that we see cause and effect in the universe, but then he also says we cannot transfer this to the creation of the universe because it's just not the same. We haven't, there's no real link there because we don't know anything about the creation of the universe. We can guess at it, but we don't actually know because we haven't experienced it, is what he's saying. If God is outside of time and space, as people say he is, then it's impossible for people to have any knowledge of what actually he created, or him himself, or if he was created, or whatever. We don't know anything. We can't know anything about him. So, Bertrand Russell, with two L's, remember, because people always spell that wrong and it gets really annoying for the examiner. Don't know why that's important, but still. So he's from 1872 to 1970. Bertrand Russell was kind of more about the mathematical logic, and he calls it philosophical knowledge. So, actually documenting ideas in a kind of mathematical way. He does this because he thought that everyday language is quite misleading sometimes. So even the word, like the tiny word is, if you use the word is, it can mean so many different things, and it might not actually mean what you're trying to say, if you know what I mean. His main argument against the cosmological argument is that humans commit the fallacy of composition. So we take knowledge of one thing and then we apply it to other things without actually being able to do that. So a human might say objects within the universe are created, therefore the universe was created. Like, you can't link those two things. It's kind of the same as Hume and Kant as well. He had this radio debate with this guy called Copleston, who was this raging, Christian kind of thing. But because he's based on logic and maths and things, he said that there's no evidence of a being with a necessary existence. So there's no empirical evidence. There's no hard, fast evidence like might be for science and things like that. Another main thing he focused on was that just because we see causes of things within the universe, we can't say that the universe was caused as well. So a nice little quote here, which is quite important, quite good for an exam, an essay. So just because humans have a mother, it does not mean that the universe had to have a mother. It's quite self-explanatory, really. So you can't jump from one thing to another without having actual knowledge about it. Finally, for Russell, he said that the universe could just be a brute fact. Let me say that again. Brute fact with no explanation. It's just there. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of an ignorant argument, but it's one of his arguments. It's true. It could just be there for no reason. We don't actually know. Right, so we've done all the content now. Now we need to think about the strengths and the weaknesses, because it's quite important if you're arguing an AO2 essay. So, strengths of the cosmological argument. It is a posteriori argument, so it's based on experience. Everybody in the whole world has experienced cause and effect. So why can't we apply that to other things that we don't have so much knowledge about. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is the Big Bang Theory. I mean, you don't need to know an awful lot about the Big Bang Theory other than it shows that the universe had a beginning. I mean, yes, we don't know that that is the god of classical theism, but it's better than, it kind of disproves infinite regress, so it makes the argument of all the critics fall through a bit, you know. Scientists who've actually looked at the Big Bang Theory, I mean, they can have all these theories and stuff like that, but they can't actually say why it happened, and they can prove almost anything these days. Why can't they prove that there's no God, or that there is a God, or what? No, that's contradicting myself. Why can't they prove that there's no God if they can't? If they can't find what the real reason is, then why can't it be God? Another thing, I think right now it's 12:06. That's me measuring time, isn't it? So if we're measuring time, it kind of suggests that there was a beginning somewhere, you know? If we were in an actual infinite universe, we wouldn't be able to measure time. But we can, obviously, so, shows that there could be a start. The start could have been God creating the universe, you know? Finally, another strength, the last strength, the argument answers the need to explain the cause of everything in the universe. It kind of satisfies why people think about why we need causes and stuff, because it's God, he's causing all these things, apparently. Okay, some weaknesses now. Hume, we've already talked about Hume. He would challenge our confidence in perceptions of cause and effect. So we might apply our knowledge of cause and effect to things, but they might not actually be cause and effect. They might just be coincidence, or it might not be that thing that's causing something else. So we can't say that the God is the we can't say that God is the cause of the universe and that he's like made all these effects, because we might be perceiving that wrong, Atheists like Stephen Hawking, for example, would say that the Big Bang was caused by random chance, so not an external force or whatever. So I mean, that's also a possibility, because the Big Bang Theory hasn't really been proved either way, so you could use that argument on either side, really. Atheists, so quite a lot of people, including Hume, might say that even if there is a beginning, we can't know about the nature of the prime mover. We don't know that he's all-knowing and all-powerful and all-loving and all those things. Russell, he says, just because I have a mother doesn't mean the universe has to have one, so he's using his arguments again for that, which you could use in an essay, I guess. You've got all the criticism of Hume, Kant, and Russell, so just rewind the video a bit. You see all those. Those are weaknesses of cosmological argument. And also, finally, a weakness of the cosmological argument is down to the evidence of modern science. So quantum theory, it could possibly suggest that some things can come from nothing, like all these particles appearing in different places with no cause. So if that was true and more widely applicable, then it could, potentially threaten the cosmological argument. On the other side, I believe you can appreciate being loved till you've been burned. Okay, so value for religious faith. Valuable elements might include, if you look at way 1 and 2, if you're a believer, it kind of, the fact that God is described as the prime mover and the first cause is, explains to the believer about their religion, so it's coherent, it makes sense for them. Way 3 as well demonstrates the reason why there is something rather than nothing, which is quite reassuring, and quite a lot of people can't, the scientists are trying to prove that there doesn't need to be, this necessary being, but if we know there's something rather than nothing, then it reassures the faith, you know. This guy called Richard Swinburne, he talks about religious experience and stuff, if you're doing that topic. But he says that it's quite a simple argument, really. He says that if you combine all the different factors of the classical arguments together, then they are persuasive. So therefore the cosmological argument can be seen as quite valuable for religious faith. It might not convert people. This is why it'd be valuable. It might not convert people because it's not on its own. It might not be very convincing, but it's quite reassuring for people to see the reflection of God, of Abraham, in the world around them. So that, yeah, that's it really. Some not valuable elements though. Right, this guy called Barth, he says that the reason does not lead to the God of Abraham. So this God of Abraham that all Christians believe in, well, not all, but most, you know, only faith can show the truth, not any amount of proof, you know. There's no, even if you have this cosmological argument, it has no proof, so it needs kind of faith anyway. So even if you didn't have it, it makes, you know, it wouldn't make a difference to faith at all. Martin Luther, I'm sure you've heard of him before, he says that we are justified by faith alone. We don't need the cosmological argument, we just got to believe. So in that sense it's not that valuable. William James, from the religious experience guy, you might be doing that subject, I'm not, but he says that the feeling and the experience is all that matters. So the philosophical justification that comes afterwards is not that important compared to the feelings and the faith and like the inner experiences and stuff that matters the most. So in that sense, again, the cosmological argument is not really needed. Kierkegaard, he's got a funny name really, says we have to make a leap of faith. So, and in making that leap of faith, we are showing our dedication to God, and so having the cosmological is sort of unnecessary really. We don't really need it anymore if it's all about faith, is what he's saying. Okay, so another not so valuable, a reason why it's not so valuable might be because if a believer reads Hume, Kant and Russell and sees the weaknesses of the cosmological argument, then it might undermine their faith. So but if the cosmological argument wasn't there in the first place, then there wouldn't be these counteractions. So it might, and you wouldn't have to have other parts of the faith undermined. So, for example, Hume says that even if a creator is proved, so even if like the start of the universe was, you know, confirmed, it might not necessarily be the God of Abraham. Then it would leave a believer thinking, oh no, well, what do I do now? You know, this is what I've been thinking my whole faith life. So now it's all been jeopardized. So it's undermined it, which should be definitely not a valuable thing for religion. Another thing, belief in God is more empirical proof than God acting in the world. So all these things like praying and, you know, worshipping and things like that, they're all more empirical proof, if you know what I mean, because it means that, you know, it's lots of people experiencing all these things. It's kind of more proof than God actually doing all these things that Aquinas said he does, so like acting in the world and sustaining it and things like that. So yeah, it's less valuable because it's not like the most important thing. It's more about the faith again, I think is what they're trying to say. The last thing, a reason why it's not that valuable for religion, is how do we define religious faith? So theology is different for different religions. So if you're looking at Hinduism, then the creation stories are talking about an eternal universe, which is completely contradicted by the fact that Genesis talks about the earth having a beginning. The first words of Genesis are in the beginning, so it's kind of like contradicting, so having this cosmological argument saying there is a beginning might be quite conflicting with some religions like Hinduism, because that would just completely undermine their beliefs and in their holy books and things like that. I hope that was useful to you. I mean, I know it's not quite up to scratch, and I don't know if everything will be very useful, but it helps me, and I hope it helps you too. Good luck with your exams and stuff, and yeah, I'll catch you later. I'll probably do another video, maybe in Australian, but I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. See you later.